If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Welcome back to my coverage of the Kristin Smart case. We're heading into week number 4, day number 9, Monday, August 8th of 2022. And Tim Davis is first on the stand. And most of us know that he's a pretty important person in this case.
Testimony resumed today in the Kristin Smart murder trial. Another former Cal Poly student that walked back with Smart toward the dorms on the night she went missing was on the witness stand.
Tim Davis was a junior at Cal Poly in 1996.
So let's go into what his testimony was. So Tim recalled and shared that fateful walk with Kristin. He explained how Paul appeared out of a dark walkway along the side of the house. When I hear this and the more I learn about Paul, it seems like he really adhered closely to his quote-unquote creeper reputation. So moving on, Paul offered to help with Kristin and they headed towards the dorms. The 4 of them turned onto Campus Way. And you can watch our video of Kristin's last walk, which is linked down below in the description box. It really shows you the steps she took, the distance of the walk, the distance between Paul's and Kristin's dorms. It was eye-opening for us and sad as well to do that walk. And we're also pleasantly surprised to even come across a small memorial in front of Muir Hall, Kristin's old dorm, in her honor. It was Paul, Tim, Cheryl, and Kristin, of course, on the journey. Cheryl told Tim he didn't need to go the rest of the way, and Paul said, quote, "I got her from here." Those words are chilling in retrospect. I hope none of them blame themselves for what Paul did. Even those of us who know creepy people most likely would still never expect what happened to actually happen. They were all so young and inexperienced. Definite lessons to learn for future, for others to heed as well. You really gotta at least stick with the buddy system. Up to this point, Tim was supporting Kristin's full weight as they walked. Tim said, quote, "She was just like a sack of potatoes. I could feel her weight on my shoulders. I was definitely keeping her up," end quote. Tim told jurors he had relived that night over the past 26 years. Tim helped organize the party, and it was supposed to be a birthday party for 2 of his friends, but as happens with college parties, uninvited guests also showed up, including Kristin and Paul Flores. Tim, of course, remembers Paul and Kristin at the party, and he remembers the 2 of them falling together. Tim explained he was trying to break up the party when he spotted Kristin face down on the grass on the neighbor's property. And that's the first I've heard that. And it gives me clarity because when we were there at the scene, I didn't see any grass area, and I figured that it was so long ago that they probably don't have grass there any longer. And right now in our county, since California's a drought, you actually get paid to get rid of your grass. So I just assumed the landscaping had been changed. But now I know that it was the neighbor house there where she was, and that makes a lot more sense. So moving on, he wanted to walk Cheryl to her dorm because it was obvious Kristin needed help as well. And this is when Paul appeared, as I mentioned above. And Tim's house was in the other direction, so when Cheryl told him it was far enough, he just left the 3 of them. And additional information I found out that night that I didn't know about was, I guess, Tim had let a friend borrow his car to drive the people from the party home, a bunch of people, back to the dorms, actually. And right after they drove away, he spotted Cheryl, and Cheryl was a good friend of his. And he explained to Cheryl she just missed the ride, and then that's when this unraveled with spotting Kristin passed out on the lawn next door. He said she looked like she was trying to sleep. He said he told her to get up and leave. He noted she was wearing short shorts, a short shirt, and tennis shoes, and she had, quote, goose pimples, end quote. He said he knew she was in no capacity to do anything, and Kristin told him, quote, "I'm cold and I want to go home," end quote. And that made me really sad when I heard that. All right, Tim said Paul was drunk but walking just fine, and Tim said he could see the glow of the dorms in the background, indicating they were close. Tim admitted he had several beers, but he remembers everything vividly from that night, and he was never drunk at any point. He did say Kristin was hung over Paul's shoulders, and her arm was around his neck, with Paul's arm around her waist. And this is the last spot she was when they said goodbye. Creepy looking. Now for cross-examination of Tim by Robert Sanger, who was Paul's defense attorney. He challenged Tim on whether he said Paul came from the side area of the house the first time in the preliminary hearing last year. And the response was, well, he came from the left, and the side yard was the only thing to the left. Tim was also accused of being the bartender at the Grande party of May 1996, and he said everyone was a bartender. He recalls the keg, but not tequila, whiskey, or any other type of booze like that. Sanger challenged him about his previously saying that he didn't know either Kristin or Paul before the party, and admitted to telling investigators that Kristin leached onto him at the party and tried to hug him and kiss him, and he was a little irritated about it, and irritated that he had to get her home later as well. The jury actually sent more jury questions. Now that I'm used to these jury questions, I'm actually excited when they come through. So anyway, one question was, did Paul use Kristin's name during the walk? And Tim's answer was no. The other question was Kristin's speech difficult to understand? And that answer was also no. When Sanger asked if Tim was annoyed by his involvement in the case, Tim said he's had people come to his house, send him letters, call his house, and all kinds of other things regarding the case. Tim was next cross-examined by Ruben's attorney, Mr. Misek. Mr. Misek asked him, do you remember in your interview with Purville, who is the prosecution, the meeting last year, you said, I want to put this effer away. And Tim said, yes. I love that. Misek said, and that's why you're here today, right? And Tim's answer was, yep. Side note, of course he wants justice for his murdered friend. And he's probably pretty upset about how it's left a shadow over his whole entire life all these years. So many of us are starved for justice. I imagine Tim is also. Can you imagine the need for justice for all these people much closer to the case than us? And with that, there were more jury questions. So, one of the questions they asked Tim was if he recalled smelling alcohol on Kristin's breath. And Tim did not. And the other question was again about her speech. And Tim explained that her speech was slurred and quiet, like someone who just wanted to be sleeping. Tim's testimony ended before lunch. And that was a long testimony. He was started in the morning all the way to lunch. And now I'm going to go over some important things that I remember from Tim's previous testimony. I'm not sure if he's going to go over the same things, if he's recalled, or maybe these things were covered and not released by media. But this will give insight, especially to those that haven't followed the case as long as a lot of us, and it's a good refresher for the rest of us. So let me go over some of these. Even though Cheryl originally refused Tim's help, he insisted because he believed Paul would try to have sex with Kristin based on his observations that night. Tim recalled Paul being aggressive towards females at the party that night, even girls with boyfriends. He told police that Paul was a little weird, and everybody realized it. And that night at the party, people repeatedly told him, quote, dude, we hate you, end quote. Yet Paul kept bugging people anyway and didn't leave the party. I just can't imagine. Paul asked another guy at the party if he knew Kristin, and when the guy said no, Paul said Kristin was attractive. Once again, this is contradicting what he told the police and still tries to say to this day that he wasn't attracted to her and so on. And the party was over at 2:30 a.m., by the way. That's the first time I've heard that exact time.
So let's talk about the first person on our list here. We have Jeromy Moon. There's a picture, by the way, you're looking at of his black eye, the bruising under his right eye.
After lunch, the prosecution called Jeromy Moon to the stand. In May of 1996, Jeromy was actually an Arroyo Grande High School senior, And I will put the link below where we actually went to the high school there to show you Paul's high school, which is where Jeromy was attending at the time. So Jeromy hung with Paul a couple times a month, and he was hanging out with him on May 26th, the Sunday after the party at the center of this case. They were at their buddy Doug's house when Jeromy noticed Paul's black eye, and he asked him how he got it. Paul said he woke up with it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Let's recap again as we continue to hear a multitude of explanations for the black eye. So now you just woke up with it. Before it was from basketball. Before that, you got pushed at a party. And at one point, you also injured yourself installing the car stereo. I wonder how many more lies he can come up with. He is such an idiot. He can't even stick to one story. He's a horrible liar. This basketball game, as you've noticed, was several days after the Friday 24th party, and the black eye was already there. So they played basketball with Jeromy, Paul, and 2 other guys, and Paul did not get hit in the face at any time during the game, and they were all very adamant about that. On a side note, it's tripping me out that I once knew a guy named Tim Davis and another person named Jeromy Moon, except for he doesn't spell it with an O in Jeromy. They're different people, I know that, but it's still kind of weird to me. So Jeromy said Paul never mentioned Kristin. Paul never mentioned that a Cal Poly student was missing at all, which I find very suspicious if you ask me. It was noted that Moon will be recalled again to take the stand at least 2 times, if not more, according to the prosecution. Now moving on to the cross-examination of Jeromy Moon by Robert Sanger. And Robert Sanger challenged Jeromy, asking if he told a detective, July 8th of 96, that he didn't see any marks on Paul's face. Jeromy did not remember that and said he saw the black eye Sunday the 26th of May. Reading from a report where the statement referred to Jeromy not seeing a black eye until the following week, June 2nd or 3rd, when it was referred to, and trying to create confusion, the prosecution on redirect pointed out that Monday, the following week, would have been June 3rd, and that was not a holiday for Jeromy, and he would have been in school then. So that's how they were proving, I guess, the dates, the discrepancy there. And to me, that just shows more desperation on the part of the defense attorneys. I wonder how the jury's interpreting all of that, what I interpret as desperation. Sanger wanted to know what reports Jeromy saw before he came to trial to refer to his previous statements, which I also don't think is a big deal. Who has a memory that's going to be tight 26 years ago when you were in your late teens, early 20s? So Misik, Ruben's defense attorney, had no questions for Jeromy, and they excused Jeromy at 2:25 p.m. Once Jeromy was excused from this stand, JT Camp, the district attorney investigator that we've heard from a few times already, was called back. Actually, this is the 3rd time he's come to the stand. And I found that interesting too, that approach of calling him back as needed. So they're kind of thinking out of the box, and I do like that. So Camp listed the statements and reports where Jeromy was shown at the June 8th, 2021 meeting. Those reports were the June 1996 District Attorney Investigator Hanley report, also the July 96th and another August 96 Detective Stewart interviews, and the September 96 Detective Tate interviews, and November 1997 Private Investigator Addison's interviews. Sorry, that was a mouthful. Hopefully that was clear enough. When Sanger asked Camp if they reviewed the inconsistent black eye testimony, Camp said no, due to the fact that it was a preparatory meeting before a preliminary hearing. And that was pretty much it. Camp was excused by 2:45, so that was a very brief testimony from him. Before we go into the final testimony of the day from Mike Kennedy, campus police, let's listen to a little bit more about the black eye. I found this interesting.
Focus on this black eye because I think it could potentially be one of those things that the jury can latch on to and say, well, what about that black eye? What about that black eye? If they're deliberating in November, what about that black eye? So I have one question for you tonight. What about that black eye?
Yes, please do tell us about this black eye and all the lies that Mr. Paul came up with so far.
Talking two former friends and an investigator from 1996. That same weekend, Kristin Smart went missing that Memorial Day weekend after that party where she was last seen alive. All of these people have interactions with Paul Flores, who's being charged with murder here on trial, and they all noticed that one thing, the black eye.
Remember Mario, the pool-playing friend, and what he said about the black eye?
Last week, I was reporting that Mario Garcia, one of his former friends who used to play pool with him, also noticed a black eye. And he said that when they were together that weekend, he wore a baseball cap and he had it pulled down and he was trying to hide his eye. He said somebody pushed him at a party. He didn't say which party, though.
We're going to hear a lot more supposed nicknames of Paul's, and I'm going to give him one right now myself. Pinocchio!
And 3 different explanations for that black eye. To me, that's right. The key. That is the key.
Last to testify on this day is Lawrence Mike Kennedy. He goes by Mike Kennedy, the campus police officer. And his testimony actually went quite in depth and was much longer than Investigator Camp's, that's for sure. So he led the investigation, like I said, for Kristin's case. He's now retired. And this was Memorial Weekend of 1996. He interviewed Paul twice following the holiday weekend, once at the dorm and once at Cal Poly Police Department. The Thursday of that week, he had to reference his original reports multiple times to make sure the dates and such were accurate. Who could remember that 26 years ago? I mean, that's ridiculous for anyone to expect it. As you recall, even the attorneys in that previous episode stated that they would prefer to refresh on something that happened 26 years ago themselves. So Kennedy went on to say that Paul denied knowing Kristin in both interviews, and both times he told him that the black eye was from basketball. He reviewed that Paul told him he last saw Kristin at the intersection of Grand Avenue and Perimeter Road. Look at this creepy, dark, nighttime picture of that spot. It gives me the chills, kinda. From there, Paul said they went their separate ways. And you can see in our Kristin's last walk video how it slopes up towards her dorm there. And I feel like that'd be really challenging for her if she could barely walk. And then there's some stairs. Not a lot of stairs, but there are some stairs leading up to her main door. And then a heavy glass door to enter as well. So those all seem challenging when we were actually on scene. You can watch that video to see more detail if you'd like. It's on the playlist. I'm sure anyone who's ever been as drunk or drugged as Kristin was described to be can relate to the challenges mentioned. Flat ground would be hard enough to walk on in that state, let alone up a slope, and it kind of winds, and it's not steady ground, to say the least. When Officer Kennedy asked Paul if he found Roxy attractive, which Roxy is Kristin, for those of you who don't know, it was a nickname she went by, Paul answered, "Nuh-uh, she was drunk. She was taller than me. Like, if someone's promiscuous, I don't find them attractive." That's what Paul said. Paul went on to say Roxy was like over flirtatious. "I guess even if the girl wanted me, I wouldn't." Newly unsealed documents reveal that Detective Kennedy asked Paul if he had any nicknames at Cal Poly, and Paul said Paulino or Pauly Shore. Pauly Shore was really popular back then, I think MTV stuff. Mike told Paul, quote, "The phrase we have heard was Chester the molester." Paul responded, "What? No, nuh-uh." Then Mike asked him, "Nobody's ever called you that? You've never heard Chester the molester?" And Paul said, "Never." Side note, in my opinion, you could be oblivious to derogatory nicknames used behind your back. I mean, people usually don't say it to your face. It's more like how they reference you when you're not listening. Paul claimed, quote, he didn't know how he ended up walking back with her. It was a slow walk since she was drunk, he said. He gave her a hug and left, and then he ran into someone at Lucia Hall when he got home, and Kennedy told Paul they'd need to interview that person. And of course, that mystery person was never located. Mike noticed Paul had scrapes on his knees, too. along with his black eye. And it's weird the scratches aren't mentioned as much as the black eye, which to me, they seem like they'd be equally important in this case. But anywho, Kennedy had told Paul that it was important that he realize how important this is and that this is a very serious matter with a missing woman. And you were the last person to see her. And Paul said, yeah, that's serious. Mike then told Paul that they had interviewed 25 men discussing Kristin, also known as Roxy, and they were told that she was rather promiscuous. Mike said, look, from our point of view, we have someone with a nickname Chester the Molester, last seen with someone said to be promiscuous, and you are claiming nothing went on. Paul said, quote, absolutely nothing. No kiss, just the hug when she was saying she was freezing, end quote. By the way, side note, this document here was one of the recently released documents from the court where we're getting access to all the original interviews, so that part's really exciting, just letting you know. Purbo, the prosecution, said that the police knew that Paul was lying through his teeth. And on cross-examination, where Sanger asked Kennedy about his training and his background in law enforcement, and Sanger also asked if Paul's traffic warrant, which was pending, could possibly explain his extra nervous demeanor. When Mike visited Paul's dorm room on May 28, 1996, they stated that Paul's heart was pounding under his t-shirt. And he did mention he was worried they were going to arrest him on his outstanding warrant. My question is, why didn't they arrest him on the warrant if he had one? Was it a jurisdictional thing or the beginning of 26 years of Paul's preferential treatment?
He inquired about Paul's bruise, and Paul told him that he had obtained the black eye while playing basketball over Memorial Day weekend. So, Vinny, right here, less than 4 weeks of testimony. We haven't even had a full week of testimony, by the way, because there's delays. And we've had 3 witnesses each say that they've seen the defendant with a black eye when the girl went missing.
Mike was asked about the layout and the furniture in Paul's dorm, and Kennedy is expected to resume his testimony on Tuesday, August 9th of 2022. Oh my gosh, check this out. Another one of Reuben's jurors was excused, and an alternate was sworn in. Could this be related to the judge's stern reminder about the duties and not reading or watching things that the judge did the other day in the courtroom? This is cuckoo. We've lost so many jurors already. The hard stuff is still to come. Then what? And Salinas is not very big and a pretty interesting city as well. Time for some more tidbits. So apparently, Paul claims that when he got home that night, he barfed and that he had to go take a shower. And first he said he didn't see anybody. And then he said he did see somebody in the bathroom. And campus police said they needed to interview that person, and they searched and searched and searched, and no such person was ever found. So once again, we're going to give Paul his one of his many nicknames. So I'm going to deem him Pinocchio here again. Sadly, I have to report to you that I'm finding a lot of varying reporting. I'm not sure why, especially with these people who are actually present in the courtroom. It's hard to get accurate reporting more and more these days, and in this particular case, I trust Chris Lambert the most, to be honest. He's a regular person like you or I who cared enough to get involved and make a difference in this case. And boy, has he made a difference. He was key to getting this case moving again after years of being stagnant, assisting with case clues, resolutions, etc. It makes me feel all warm and happy inside. I thought this was a helpful slide in that there's only one media pool camera allowed in the courtroom, and this tells you who's who at the zoo, basically, with some titles on these captions for those of you who are just coming on board with following the trial.
The ongoing issue of absent jurors has put a pause in progress in the Kristin Smart murder trial. On Tuesday, another juror was unable to attend court, forcing Judge Jennifer O'Keefe to postpone trial for the day instead of continuing down her list of alternates. Oh
my goodness, another court delay due to jurors' absence. Judge O'Keefe also reminded the jurors to let the court know in advance if they needed to be out. Are you kidding me? Jeez, what's really going on with these jurors? To me, this is getting absolutely ridiculous. One of my loyal subscribers, Spurts, shout out to Spurts, he's very insightful, and he brought up a good point, several good points actually, often he does, about revamping the jury system to include proper compensation. Otherwise, a true jury of our peers will be impossible as time goes on. It's just, who can afford it? You know what I mean? As you recall, even the attorneys were concerned about the jury system in the previous video. There's no trial coverage today at all, so let's dive in a wee bit into some of the media release rulings. And I also can't help but think about the change of venue and how I would almost guarantee this BS would not be happening in San Luis Obispo. It's just nonsense. Once you're seated as a juror, you better be committed. These guys are dropping like flies. I mean, what is really going on? I'm starting to really wonder. I'll keep my suspicions to myself for now.
Judge O'Keefe also informed the court that testimonies are still scheduled to resume tomorrow, the same day that hundreds more pages of previously unsealed documents from the trial would be made available to the public.
I'm just loving how all these secrets are coming out and getting access to all this information. It's great.
Last Wednesday, per request of media outlets covering the trial, Judge O'Keefe unsealed over 400 pages of documents detailing arguments from prosecutor Christopher Prevel, as well as both defense attorneys, over what pieces of evidence should be permitted in the trial. The documents released included motions from the defense to not allow certain DNA samples to be cross-examined in court, most notably the evidence gathered from Paul Flores' bedsheets at his Cal Poly dorm room. Among the documents were also motions from the state to not allow cross-examination of witness Jennifer Hudson, who had previously claimed to hear Paul say Kristin was either put or buried in Wasna.
You all already know my opinion about Jennifer Hudson. I think they should just leave her out of it. Her testimony is a little doubtful, to say the least. The ironic thing is, it is believed that Kristin's remains are truly scattered throughout Wasna, unrelated to Jennifer's testimony. And we do have the episode where we drove all the way out Wasna. It's pretty desolate out there. And if someone did scatter someone like that, it'd be pretty difficult to find them. We've gone out there several times. It's super duper discouraging. You don't even know where to begin, really.
The newly unsealed documents also detail motions from defense attorney Christopher Prevel.
Another example of a media error. Prevel is the prosecution, not the defense. He may be offended by that. And I know it's easy to make mistakes. It takes me hours to review these and edit and correct my errors, and I'm sure sometimes they slip by. So please forgive me if I make any mistakes.
Arguing that the evidence from soil collections on Ruben Flores' property must be allowed for examination and trial. Amidst the pages are numerous accounts from potential witnesses, acquaintances of the Smart and Flores families, as well as those of, quote, unlikely suspects.
Could it possibly be the mysterious Ted again?
The outstanding documents that will be released tomorrow are set to contain more accounts from parties connected to Kristin, Paul, and Ruben, as well as the additional motions filed by the competing counsels.
This is the second time the trial was canceled for the day due to an absent juror. Legal experts in Salinas say they expect it will happen again throughout the months-long trial.
I hope that it ends around October because we keep on having delays. Court was dark today. That was unexpected. Had a couple delays last week. We've lost a couple more jurors.
Here's what's coming next. And who said it was a blood stain all of a sudden?
What we're really looking towards is more key evidence. Of course, there was a blood stain in Paul Flores' dorm room on his mattress. Then there was the archaeologist that went to Paul's dad's house where her body was allegedly buried. So there's a lot of that evidence that we need to get to yet. And again, this is only week 4, not even a full week yet. Testimonies are set to begin tomorrow at 8:30 a.m.
As always, justice for Kristin.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know know that I'm blessed.